Hello everybody and welcome to Nathan on Shuffle and to my latest episode here of my review roundup series. This is where I'm going to talk about all of the albums in January that I've been enjoying that I haven't done a full-on review for the channel, but I wanted to mention and recommend to you guys. So basically every month, at the end of the month, I want to do an accounting of all the music that I've listened to, my thoughts about it, if I would recommend it, you know, what genre, brief description, just to give you guys some ideas. And then I'll turn it over to you guys to go check it out. I'll put a list in the description of the titles of all these albums so that you can go search them, find them on Bandcamp or your site of choice, streaming service, you know, your favorite prog vendor, whatever the case may be. And so I hope this will be a fun way for me to talk about a lot of the releases that are coming out in a quicker format. Just me kind of talking casually. I haven't taken a lot of notes or done a lot of preparation. I just want to go through a list of the records I've been listening to that I've given some time with to let you know if I think they're worth recommending and, you know, my kind of brief impressions about them. So I have a dozen albums to get through today, hoping to get through the video fairly quickly. So let's dive in and talk about some records. All right, first I want to talk about Spirergy. This is their album Wherever Forever that came out on January 1st, Symphonic Prog from the UK. And I'm doing these just in release date order, so starting from the earliest release to the most current release. And this is kind of a one-man band style project from someone named Dave Allen. He does all of the instrumentation, guitars, bass, keyboards, programming, vocals. And so it has that feel of kind of, you know, someone doing everything themselves, kind of building things in their own studio, kind of homegrown vibe to it. But it's really well done, really well fashioned, just really great melodic sensibilities. He has some progressive complexity and symphonic grandeur throughout the record, some great melody, some great hooks. Throughout the record. There's kind of a longer piece towards the end. The title track is 60 minutes long, so if you like your classic prog rock, there's a lot to enjoy here. Nothing that really blew me away or makes me think this is going to be one of my favorite records this year, but very pleasant to listen to and much in that kind of classic symphonic prog style that I tend to enjoy. So I wanted to mention it for those who may like that kind of a more mature approach to this style of music that I thought was really well done and had some really strong qualities to it. Next, a little bit off the beaten path from my usual prog taste, I actually quite enjoyed the new album by Alter Bridge. This is their self-titled record that came out January 9th. This is their follow-up to Pawns and Kings that came out in 2022. And this is just really great modern hard rock music. You know, there's nothing proggy about this, but they bring this kind of classic rock sensibility, a little bit of a almost metallic edge to it, and deliver something that's really solid. Just excellent hard rock music done expertly well. Miles Kennedy is the vocalist, who of course is amazing, one of the premier rock vocalists of today, and Mark Tremonti is incredible as the guitarist. You know, they come kind of from the ashes of Creed, which gets a lot of hate online and so forth, but a fantastic project. This is their 8th studio record, and Slave to Master, the last track, is an excellent longer piece. It's 9 minutes long, so you get a little bit of an expansive flavor, but just really great riffs, great melodies, just sticks with you, just really catchy, fun, excellent hard rock music that I've been enjoying. So I wanted to mention it, even though it doesn't really have anything to do with progressive rock, as I usually talk about. Another more obscure, one-man band style project. This is Tyler Kamen and the album Echoe's End. Maybe more in the psychedelic space rock sort of vein. He's from the U.S., multi-talented artist from New York, in fact. And he's doing all of the instrumentation and vocals and everything on the record. And it's, you know, more laid back, more in this kind of Pink Floydian style, just very spacey, very just fluid and dreamy. Really fun record, really interesting musically. And once again, like I said, the one-man band thing, you know, sometimes I feel like they're kind of missing some of that collaborative spirit and, you know, people playing off of each other within the band that really brings a spark of energy and fun to the music that's a little bit missing, but he does an incredible job, like, composing this album and putting these pieces together, and it's just really beautiful and symphonic and just a really interesting, gorgeous little record here. He first came to my attention with his album Cornucopia Modus from 2024, which is more of, like, kind of a goofier, like, off-the-wall, brighter prog album. This one's a little bit more laid back and serious and focused, and I think it's really well done. So well worth your time if you're into this kind of more Floydian, psychedelic rock sort of space. I think this is a really excellent record with some great, beautiful guitar work, and definitely a signature sound by this artist who's making a lot of music. He put out a record I didn't realize even since Cornucopia Modus, between this one and that one, so that I haven't checked out yet, but I thought I'd mention it in the episode since it's something I've been listening to. Next, I wanted to mention Soen, Reliance. This got a lot of attention in the prog metal space. This came out January 16th, multinational group from different areas in the world here. Martin Lopez is part of the group as the drummer, who I believe he's played with Opeth, so he's kind of a big name here. And I've heard a lot of mixed opinions about this one. Some people are not too thrilled and don't think Soen is really doing anything very exciting lately, that their last few albums have felt a little phoned in and kind of just generic, bland prog metal. And, this band has never been one of my favorites, honestly, but I think it's really solid music, great musicianship, really well executed tracks, great production values, nothing that really stands out to me particularly, and nothing like really calls for me to go back to this record a lot. But I don't find anything objectionable about it either. I think it's just really pleasant and well done. If you like just kind of your standard prog metal, I wish there was just more progressive stuff in it. Honestly, it's just pretty straightforward, and not too much different than the Alter Bridge album in terms of like the progressiveness of it, from my perspective. And I thought the Alter Bridge record was a little bit more fun than this one, so I've been listening to that one a little bit more. But I'm not trying to knock it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this record. I think it's well done, well crafted. And if you really enjoy this style prog metal sound, like, you're going to really enjoy this record. It's right on par with their other recent releases they've done. And they always have a high quality of excellence in their band. But it's just, wish there was something a bit more exciting to draw me in, something a bit more experimental, progressive, something to kind of shake things up from just their typical sound that sometimes can fall a little flat over the course of a full record, but enjoyable nonetheless, because it's excellent musicians playing great music, and what can you argue about? It's just good stuff. An album that's really surprised me is Computer Nerd and the album 20,000 Years and Still Going Strong from January 16th. This is a New York-based musical storyteller, and this is kind of a concept record, perhaps, talking about the next ice age. An immortal man haunted by past loves faces a lonely AI that traps him in a seductive delusion, forcing him to choose between false comfort and the risk of real connection. That's the premise of the record, kind of timely in our day and age, so it's a really interesting concept. And the music is really fascinating too. It's a little bit lower production values, once again, it's kind of a little bit of, a do-it-yourself kind of production style here. I found this on Bandcamp, but really exciting and interesting music. Has a very cool progressive rock flavor. I think it takes some cues from like jazz and Broadway almost. The vocal style is really unique. There's kind of male and female vocals throughout the record. There's a lot of different instrumentation going on. Sometimes you get a little bit of a saxophone and some flutes and other kind of instrumentation going on. I felt the middle of the record was a little slow. It's kind of ballad heavy in the middle of the record, but the beginning and ending have a lot of exciting tracks that have multiple parts to them and are a little bit more lengthy, giving a more progressive feel. So I love a good concept record, and this one really surprised me. So this comes strongly recommended. It ended up being one of my favorite records that I listened to in January, even though it's a little bit not as polished as a lot of the music that I listen to, but I think that adds to its charm. It has a little bit of an indie style charm to it and feels pretty fresh and different than a lot of the other stuff that I've been listening to. So it brought up a different style that I thought was fascinating and gave a little bit of a variety to the records that I've been listening to. So definitely worth checking out. Another album on my radar is Cold Night for Alligators with All That's Left. This is a prog metal group from Denmark. And there isn't much to say here, honestly. It's solid for what it is, more in the kind of modern alternative metal style vein, like a lot of some of the newer acts have been doing. Some of the newer acts that have been signed to Inside Out, for example, like Royal Sorrow comes to mind. So I wish there, once again, was a little bit more of a progressiveness to them. I'm looking for progressive metal more in the style of like a Haken is really the mold that I'm looking for, that bring a lot of progressive spirit to it. This is more just really well done, metal music with a little bit of prog flourishes here and there. But they sound really excellent. They're a really strong band and have a good, heavy nature to them. And I really enjoyed what I was listening to, even if I didn't return to it a whole ton. But if you like some more heavier influences in your music and like that prog metal space and the more current alternative metal style, this is going to be a good one to check out. So I wanted to mention it in my list here. Then I've got to mention Alan Morse and his record So Many Words, which came out January 22nd. He's, of course, the guitarist from Spock's He's a brother of Neil Morse, who everyone knows if you watch my channel at all. He's my favorite musical artist by far. Neil Morse, I think, is a genius. And this is a really serviceable solo record from Alan Morse. I really enjoyed it. It's not quite as excellent as like Neil Morse's solo stuff. I think this doesn't really have that much progressiveness to it. It's much more kind of straightforward songs here. But it's really well done, and he brings a lot of, his Spock's cohorts to play on the record as well. And Neil Morse pops up here and there on a couple tracks, singing, sharing vocals with him as well. So you got a lot of cool guest stars throughout the record. Simon Phillips, Jimmy Keegan, Nick DiVirgilio, Dave Maros, Ted Leonard, Ryo Okamoto, Tony Levin, Neil Morse, like I mentioned. Just a lot of the big figures in the new prog space, and of course his bandmates from Spock's Beard. So you're going to get a lot of great musicianship. You're going to get some cool tunes. But nothing blew me out of the water, honestly, on this record. It was just serviceable, good, music in the vein of Morse's style here. So I really recommend it. And if you're a big Spock's Beard fan like I am, it's kind of a good additional piece to add to the collection. Nothing essential in terms of Spock's Beard's discography, but a really solid record. I probably preferred his previous record, 4 O'Clock in Hysteria, which I believe was a bit more instrumental and focused a bit more on his like guitar chops, where this one is a lot more song based, and every track, I believe, or at least most tracks, have vocals to them. And he picked kind of more straightforward music in this one as compared to more jazz fusion-y kind of guitar workouts in his other record. So I was hoping a little bit more of that on this one, but it's still solid and still great songwriting and well worth checking out if you're a big fan of the Morses and of Spock's Beard. Another one of my favorite releases of the month is Sykofant's Leaves. It's an EP, so it's only 3 tracks. It's 23 minutes long. But if you pair it with their EP from last year, which was called Red Sun, it basically gives you a full-length record. Red Sun is like side 1 and Leaves is side 2. I believe they're releasing it on physical formats in that style, where it's like a full LP with side 1 being Red Sun, side 2 being Leaves. This is a Norwegian band, heavy prog, definitely very retro and very classic sounding, drawing inspiration from Pink Floyd, King Crimson, Led Zeppelin. This album in particular is a bit more on the lighter side of their sound, more in the Pink Floyd camp than in the Led Zeppelin camp. The first record, like I mentioned, Red Sun, was a bit heavier, a bit more in that harder rock style. This one is a bit more laid back, although there's still moments of, intensity and harder edge to it, especially in the big a Heart of the Woods epic track at the end. I love when they fall into a cool groove. You get a little bit of a funk flavor in Mycelium March. This just really blew me away, and combined with Red Sun just makes for a fantastic follow-up record to their self-titled debut. So this comes with the highest recommendation, probably maybe my favorite thing on this. Well, there's a couple records coming towards the end that might be in the conversation too, but this could be maybe my favorite release of this list. Just fantastic work. A short listen, but they really pack a lot into this music. Just really fun, retro sounding hard rock and classic rock. And definitely check it out. Just listen to it, and I think you'll really enjoy it. Another prog metal release, Texture's Genotype. This is a band from the Netherlands. And right on the edge of kind of more extreme prog metal, but I think they're enough. They don't do a lot of the harsh vocals. There's a lot of clean singing on this record. It's very catchy and fun music. You get some of that technical kind of style metal like Meshuggah, but mostly it's really well done, well crafted, catchy progressive metal music that I really enjoyed. You got a feature here from Charlotte Wessels on At the Edge of Winter, bringing in some great female vocals. So this really worked for me. You get a little bit of harsh stuff every so often, but overall, it kind of reminds me of maybe Leprous, perhaps, especially more recent Leprous. And I think that's a fun place to go with your prog metal. So I really enjoyed this record and wanted to mention it as another highlight of the month. Then I listened to HamaSaari, Pictures. This is from January 23rd. This is a progressive metal band from France. And this is more in the lighter side of the prog metal equation. Think more like Steven Wilson and the lighter side of like Porcupine Tree. You get a bit of like Pink Floyd style here. They can go into a little bit more of a metal edge like Carnival, but I think Clone and Anathema are some great reference points as well. A very cool sound to them that I just really fell in love with. It's a really cool record, easy to listen to. It's pretty short. It's like 41 minutes long, but a lot of great melodies, great singing, great sounds to it. It was a band that I wasn't very aware of. It sounds like they came out in 2021, so they haven't been out a ton, and their debut record came out in 2023. So this is a fantastic record to check out if you like more of that kind of Porcupine Tree, Clone, more atmospheric metal style. There's a lot to really enjoy on this record. Just really captivates me, brings me into their musical landscape, washes over me, and just several good tracks to check out and enjoy. So I wanted to mention their record. Definitely a highlight on the list. And then if I'm being honest, this is probably my favorite record of the group. So I got to mention Plantoid and their album Flare, which came out just on January 30th. So a very recent record, eclectic prog from the UK. This brings a lot of elements of like jazz and psych and indie rock. A more fresh, youthful sound, a female vocalist who's fantastic through the record. This is their second record. I really liked their first one, which I believe I reviewed on the channel. Fantastic follow-up to that record. I think this one brings a little bit of like an art pop, maybe like a shoegazy kind of element to their sound, but it still has kind of their math rock style as well. Starts out with some pretty King Crimson-y kind of math rock on Parasite. But I really enjoy their sound. I think they have a really cool groove and flow to them. And this is one of those bands where I get excited for like what's to come in the progressive rock and related scenes. This is what I hope for the future of prog rock and, progressive music in general. That we got young artists doing experimental things, but still has a great sense of melody, and fantastic musicianship, obviously. I really adore this record. I think there's so many highlights throughout the runtime of the piece. And if you like kind of a jazzier element to your music, if you like psychedelia, if you like something that brings in elements of, indie rock and the more modern scene, they kind of have a foot in that, windmill scene from the UK that features like Black Country New Road and Black Midi and Squid and those kinds of bands. But to me, they're, even more accessible than those groups in a lot of ways. If you're a fan of prog rock, especially coming to them, I just think there's a lot to really love in this record, and it blew me away. I've been listening to it quite a bit over the past week as I've had it, so really want to recommend this one. If you liked their previous record, especially Terapath, this is more in that style. But if you haven't heard of them yet, I think it's well worth like checking out to see if it's your kind of vibe. May not be for everyone. It doesn't have a lot in line with kind of the classic symphonic prog stuff that I tend to talk about a lot, but I think it showcases some really fresh young talent that hopefully will have a bright future ahead of them in this scene. And then the last album I'm going to talk about today, and this is a really good one as well. This is probably the most universally appealing to my core audience, I think. This is Hällas and their album Panorama that came out January 30th. This is a band from Sweden playing a very retro style of progressive rock and hard rock. Kind of think the combination of like a Genesis, but combined with Uriah Heep and Deep Purple and that kind of music. So they kind of have a toe in the prog rock space, but also a toe in kind of the, heavy hard rock space of the 70s. Rainbow, early Black Sabbath, that kind of stuff is definitely a piece of their sound as well. The album starts with a big meaty epic, a 20-minute piece called Above the Continuum, and it begins in a really interesting, fascinating way with almost like a disco beat before it gets into more typical prog rock territory. But it's a fantastic epic. To me, that's the highlight of the record, is this epic piece. But then the second half of the record is more of the shorter, more accessible tracks, more focused on kind of this 70s hard rock style that they're known for. Once again, really fantastically done. Great catchy hooks and choruses, great musicianship. This is definitely an album worth checking out if you're a prog rock fan or fan of retro classic rock in general. I think this will have a lot of wide appeal and definitely well worth your time and attention. One I plan to listen to a lot more in the coming weeks, especially that epic track is just fabulous. So another strong recommendation, capping off a pretty strong January. Usually January is a little bit light with new releases, but I felt like there was quite a bit to grab onto in this month. Some really fabulous releases on the table today. All right, and with that, I'll close this episode up. Hopefully you appreciated some of these recommendations and it gave you something to go off and check out. That's the hope for these sorts of shows, and hope you guys are doing well. Let me know in the comments any other albums from January that struck you. Of course, this isn't an exhaustive list. There's definitely other releases that came out this month that I'm not talking about on this episode. These are just the standouts for me personally, what I've been personally listening to over the course of the last month. So and of course, I've been listening to a lot of Big Train and Neil Morse Band also, but those are February releases, and I'll be talking about those quite a bit more on the channel. So thank you guys once again, and keep enjoying the music out there. That's what it's all about, is just finding great new music to enjoy and staying positive and staying happy. Thank you guys, and I'll catch you hopefully in a future episode. Bye. Enjoy.